Good morning, everyone. We are delighted to welcome you to the SERISS workshop. As you can see, SERISS stands for Synergy for European Research Infrastructures in the Social Science. It is a EU-funded Horizon project, and you will find many people sitting around here who have actually been engaged in different work packages of this SERISS project. So this is the combined SERISS knowledge sitting at the table here and trying to help you with your university teaching. So I think we called this course, what we called it, like Life Hacks for Quantitative Research Methods Lecturers. So what we will do today is introduce knowledge and results from the SERISS project and ways of how to transfer this knowledge into your university teaching. This is the plan, at least. So I hope we can do this. I'd like to give you a quick introduction in today's program. So as you can see in the agenda, we're starting with fair data management. I will present this part. And then the second part will be presented by Lily Bishop, sitting over there. She will introduce the topic of ethical and legal issues of data handling. And then the rest of the day will be dedicated to many different topics around around data harmonization, and this will be done by Christy Ritters and Martin Friedrich and Hannah Schiffer and also Jan. Okay, so at first I will introduce the FAIR data principles to you and give you a general introduction into the FAIR principles. And then I will just let you know about the three main perspectives on FAIR data, and about fair data management from the funder's perspective, which is one of the three perspectives you can have on fair data management. But it's important to stress this a little bit more because this will be a hot topic in the future, or it always is a hot topic. The second thing I'd like to do is introduce classroom activities we came up with. So this will give you an actual guidance on how to teach fair data principles in class. But of course, these are just suggestions. It's just like we think that this might be a good way to do it in class, and you can of course tell us, which would actually be very interesting for our feedback round. You can of course tell us that it doesn't work this way, or I don't think my students would be interested, or whatever you like. It would be really interesting to hear about your opinion on our classroom activities. This number 3 is also very interesting, I think, because the SERISS project isn't the only project that's actually dealing with or interested in fair data principles. And so I collected some more resources to use in your classroom from other projects and interesting training materials that are to be used freely and available online, most of them. I will introduce just a few, I picked a few, so you can choose maybe some for your classroom as well. Yes, and then we have some references. So let's get started on the first, or I think it's slide number 3. I don't know if they're numbered in your printouts. It's called One Fair Principles and Introduction. Do you see it? Good. Okay, so the FAIR principles, they were originally developed by a group of archivists and researchers. The group is called Force 11. So fair means what they wanted data to be is fair, meaning findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So I will introduce the general concept of the Force 11 group, and then the general concept is quite abstract. So when you hear it the first time, it's sometimes like, oh God, what do they mean? So we decided, actually it was Christy's idea to do that, and I think it's really great, to combine this with a published paper from 2 of our GESIS colleagues, Christina Eder and Alexander Jelena. Because what they did, and you also have a copy in the green folder of their paper, and if you're interested in the results, we just copied it because they were kind enough to let us use it here. But it's not that important today. What they did is they operationalized those FAIR principles into categories and use them to check election studies, or the election study data on whether it is fair or not. So you can have an actual real-life example with their publication, and you can use to check data for their fairness. So maybe I would now show you the slide with the three perspectives. Can you see that? Research, archive, funders? Can you see it? Okay. So these are the three main perspectives. I just mentioned one of them, which is our colleagues Christina and Alexander for the researcher's perspective. We're taking this example now. So in general, you will find three perspectives on fair data. First is the researcher's perspective, which is our perspective, and our perspective here at GESE's Data Archive is also the archiving perspective, which would be the second one, and the third one is the funder's perspective. So I will start with introducing the principles using examples from the first two, and I will talk about the funder's perspective later. So I just told you that we will use the Eder-Jedinger publication from last year on criteria for fair data. And then also we will use the so-called CESTA Data Management Expert Guide. So now we can do a little quiz here. Does anyone know what CESTA is? Okay, so we need to introduce it. Okay, so CESTA is a so-called ERIC, and ERIC is a permanently funded research infrastructure, permanently funded by the European Union infrastructure, and CESTA stands for Consortium of European Social Science Data Archives. CESTA brings together social science data archives across Europe, and, very important for us today, it offers training for researchers and archivists. So all the member countries of CESTA, they usually have one archive that represents the particular country, and for Germany, this is the GESE Data Archive here at GESE. So CESTA offers really great training materials for all different sorts of research data management, finding and using data, and archiving. I mean, archiving will perhaps not be that interesting for you in your jobs, but the research data management part of CESTA, I will introduce them later in more detail. They're really great. You can use them in your class, they're all licensed, and you can also learn something yourself, so they're really nice. CESTA gives a very nice, or very short, as you can see here, introduction into the fair data principles. And I think I wanted to use this as an introduction so that you can have a first look at it. So for findable, CESTA stresses the importance of persistent identifiers of data. Then I think the second one is the data access. CESTA here stresses the importance of whether limitations on the use of data are, and whether there are protocols, and whether you as a researcher can actually access data that has been produced or collected by other researchers. And then the two other ones are first interoperable. This is more the technical side of using research data, and reusable, which would be more the analytical side of the reusable data. So I will now go into detail because this is all very, I think, a little bit confusing in the beginning if you haven't heard about the concept before. So this again are the four principles of fair data. And I will now, what I will do now is show you what the developers of the fair data principles, these FORCE 11 group, how they define the different principles, and then I will show you how Eder and Jedinger, our GESE's colleagues, did it, because this is a much more practical way of looking at the principles, and I think it makes things easier to understand. So, the first one would be findable. And what you can see in blue next to the image is how the FORCE 11 group defines what findable or finding data means. So they are focusing on data and metadata, and that they are assigned a globally unique and eternally persistent identifier. And of course that the metadata specify the data identifier. And that, which is most important here, is that data are described with rich metadata. So let's have a look at what our colleagues Christina and Alex came up with. The operationalization of this principle looks like this for them. So they are asking the following question when it comes to findability of research data. Is the data provided via a data archive? Does it have a persistent identifier, for example, a DOI or a URL? Is there a study ID available? Is there versioning? Is information on errata, which means that, for example, if there are mistakes in the data or other things, is there documentation on how it was done? So, is the data findable through a search engine? Does it have a web page? And is a citation recommendation provided? And of course, this is just their idea. So you could possibly think of many other categories that you could use to explain what the findability of data means. But I think it's quite rich because they had a number of questions, so most of the things that are relevant here are covered in our experience. So let's get to the second principle, which would be data access. Again, you can see here in blue the more complicated way of explaining it from the Force 11 group, which they say that data must be retrievable by their identifier using a standardized communications protocol. This particular protocol should be open, free, and universally implementable, and should also allow for an authentication and authorization procedure when necessary, and metadata should also be accessible. So, and let's have a look at the categories. Christina and Alexander operationalized out of these. So they're asking, is there a document access without registration? If there is registration, this is not necessarily bad. So for example, here at GESIS, if you want to download data from the data archive, you also have to register, but it's free. So it's not always a bad thing. So keep in mind and be critical when it comes to those criteria, that not everything is like a judgment on the way on itself. So if there is registration, is the registration to receive data or to download data easy and is it free of charge? Is there a data download option? Again, is this free of charge? And are the variables excluded from the public use file, for example? Do you get the entire data set if you want to have it, or is there something excluded? So, for example, what's also very important are data formats. Is the data provided in Stata or SPSS or any other usual format people are using? And then, of course, there's the question of language. For example, if you have a study from, I don't know, Poland or something, is there a study description available in English? Are the questionnaires available in English, so that if you want to harmonize data, we'll talk about later in the day, it's very important to find out, and it must be really hard if it's important. So I will tell you more about this later. So, and for example, like, is there a code book available in English? Getting to the third category, which would be interoperable, is, as I just said, focuses on the way that the data can be reused technically. So the technical aspects that must be considered when reusing data. For example, do metadata use a formal, accessible, shared, and broadly applicable language for knowledge representation? And include qualified references to other metadata. So now you can see that our colleagues made a number, I think it's the largest number of questions here. So as you can see, they came up with or operationalized a number of points. It's quite a broad category, so to speak. So first, I think it's important and very interesting what they did here, that they focused not only on data but also on metadata, a lot, especially in this category. For example, like can you is information on the primary investigators provided? Is information on the funding provided? And for example, on the sampling case as well. And then also, it's about the data as well. It's about the data itself, so to speak. So is information on the sampling frame provided, for example, and on the sample size, on the mode of data collection, and so on. So let's get to the last principle, which would be reusable, and I just said that as well from the more analytical side of data reuse. So what 411 said about it, they think that if data is to be reusable analytically, it should have a plurality of accurate and relevant attributes. It should be released with a clear and accessible data usage license. It should, the data should be associated with their provenance and meet the main relevant community standards. So, Christina and Alex asking the following questions when it comes to the reusability on the analytical side. So, are the unique respondent numbers IDs available for the data? And for example, are there variable labels assigned? Are missing values defined? Are rating factors documented? Okay, so let's have a look. This was just to introduce the FAIR principles to you. So, from the more research perspective. And now, let's go to the archiving perspective. From an archiving perspective, in this case, the FAIR data principles explain in the Chester Data Management Expert Service Expert Guide. Chester suggests 4 general steps for making data fair. The first one would be to assign persistent identifiers for their data. The second one, and I think that's something very important as well, is to have sufficient sets of metadata for your data. Assign clear licenses would be the first part, and fourth would be to choose a trusted repository. So getting to the third perspective, and sometimes the picture says it all. I love this comic because you don't have to explain so much when you see it. So this is basically the funder's perspective. This is one of the most reasons the tax money that's been used to produce and to handle data is one of the main reasons, of course, for funding institutions to require researchers to follow the FAIR data principles in their work, but it's not the only one. So I've been copying a number of quotations from 2 funding institutions. The first one would be the EU Horizon 2020 program. And they say that Horizon 2020 beneficiaries make their research data fair to ensure it's soundly managed. So this is also another thing. It's about data management, not only about tax money. You can see that the EU Horizon program places great emphasis on the fair data management at the moment. And this is important for you as well, because if you ever require funding or apply for funding, it's always good to have knowledge on the fair data principles because you can put it into your application, and this is an important thing, and I think it will get more and more important in the future. So this is not only the case if you want to require the big money from the European Union, but also, for example, we have a German example, you know, there might be many other different examples from local or national funding institutions and in many other European or other countries. For example, the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, DFG, that's also an interesting part. Focuses very much on open data. Like, people who are getting money from the DFG are required to make their data freely available when it's. And then also, and that's a very interesting part also for the connections between researchers and data archives. The DFG, they even require their beneficiaries to archive the research data for 10 years after their projects. So it's very important that you get at least an introduction, like find out a data archive that's been suitable for your data, and well, you're here in the data archive today, so if you're ever interested in that, I think we can make introductions there. So I will now come to the classroom activities. topics. I will do that briefly because I don't want to steal time from the others. These classroom activities, as I said in the beginning, they are just recommendations on how you could explain or introduce the fair data principles to your students. So you can of course adapt them, use them, do whatever you like with them, but they orientate a little bit on the particular aspects I just explained. So the first one would be, you can use this in different ways. You can either use it as an introduction for your students, like explain to them that fair means findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, and let them brainstorm on this in different groups. Or you can use it in the end when students have already gained knowledge, and then have a completely different discussion on the topic. So this is just a very open format on how to do it. The second one would be that I think it would be helpful for students to understand the different perspectives on fair data. For example, take over, like, split the groups in two, and one would be the archiving group, the other one would be the researchers group, and let them discuss. Because you see that sometimes it's really hard for the archiving side to make researchers understand what they want from the other side, and the other way around. So sometimes I think it's good to change perspectives to get knowledge about what the principles are really about. So the third one would also be, this would be what we just did, or what I just did, was like, would be introduce the publication of Eden and their categories, their operationalization, and compare it to the ones that Tesla. So I think we have one left. Oh yes, and then you could also have one classroom activity or exercise, or however you might call it, to introduce the funder's perspective to students and let them discuss the different aspects of the funder's perspective and how important this would be in the future. And then, I promised you in the beginning that we would also introduce more resources to use in your classroom that are not from the SERISS project. Like, I would do that really quickly now. The first one would be, and this is also something you can use really nicely in class, because this is a so-called data management checklist. I think we have another one in the list here as well. So you could give that to your students and make them, for example, compare this with the categories that Ida and Yinka operationalized. Also, because it's always nice to discuss the topic. Because I think that even younger students or students in their early years would possibly, this is always something where you can say, I don't think so. It's like debatable, so to speak. The second one is a very nice fair data management presentation that you could use. You can even ask your students to have a look at it. I think it's even on YouTube. It's on SlideShare here, you see the link, but it might also be on YouTube. And it's a very interesting one, and it's not that long, so you could possibly even show it in class. These EPFL library fast guides, they're not only interesting for fair data, they have many other research, many other training materials that are really nice, and they come in the form of posters, something. So you have a topic, usually very complicated topic, explained really easily in one overview on a poster. So this is also very nice. So this might be the most funny one I can recommend, because I think Lily even had some postcards on them, but we don't have them anymore, do you? But they're really good, they're really nice, the design is really nice. So it's a Danish e-infrastructure corporation, and they did an entire online portal on fair data. And the funny thing is, I hope I have it in here, you have an introduction there for beginners, and you have slides, you have a webinar, I think, you have the slides as PDF, you can all download it freely, it's very nice. And then you have something that's really funny, it's called a fairy tale. You can see that over there, and they actually wrote a fairy tale about fair data. It's like a book, and you can download it, and it's so funny because it says something like, well, the great data wizards came into the castle, stuff like that. And it's always like a really funny story about fair data. But sometimes this makes it so much easier to remember things if you learn them in a way like that. And then you can see...
Can I just add, I'm sorry, but I usually hate these things because I find them patronizing and insulting, okay? These I actually find work fairly well, and they have had a great response from the undergraduates in responding to these resources, so for what it's worth.
It's really funny, yeah. It's like a little bit like kindergarten, but it's funny. So on the right side you see that you have an overview of information resources or guides about FAIR. This is also very helpful, and of course you can see that CESA is the #1 in this list. But there are also other, I don't think it's ranked by the way, but there are also other resources that might be helpful if you're looking for more information on FAIR data. So then we have another area, what I just said, you have another data checklist. I made a quick screenshot you can see on the right side so that you can see something like that. It's very easy to use for debate on what FAIR constitutes. So do we have anything else? Yeah, I think we have also 2 webinars. I don't know if you're showing webinars in your class. I'll give it as a homework, so to speak, for your students. But especially this one is very helpful. It's from the Foster project. We also used to work here at the Foster project. It's an EU project on open science. Oh, it used to be until 2 weeks ago. No, it's over. And they have this Foster portal. You find also very many information, not only about FAIR data, but also about many other different aspects that are related, like even loosely related to open science topics on this portal. And most of the thing, I think everything, well, it's open science, is free and easily accessible. So I think there's one last one. Yes, this is also very interesting, that webinar from the Research Data Alliance. You'll find it on YouTube. It's a little bit longer, I think. I think both of them are about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something. So, references. And that's it. Thank you.